Yo, what up, though? This your boy, The Problem, Isaiah Bronner, and you're now listening to Wrestling Cheers.
Taking your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially in the middle of Ashtabula. This is Wrestling Cheers. We'd like to talk about things on the Northeast Ohio independent wrestling scene. We preview shows, we review shows, and sometimes we even have interviews along the way. This is a review of AIW's the inaugural Bill Alfonso Hardcore Tournament. I'm your host, Justin Summers, and Wrestling Cheers is brought to you by Midwest Territory. Please rate, review, and subscribe your ever listened fine podcasts, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. And email, if you so choose to desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. Like I said, this is a review of the inaugural Bill Alfonso Hardcore Tournament. Already introduced myself, and this week he's back again. Charly Butters.
Yo, I'm back.
It's funny that you haven't been on in an episode, but you're about to be on the next episode too.
Yeah, it's weird
because this episode is being recorded after 299, which was recorded after 300. How
you
that?
Know, it was a day.
It was a day. It was a very long day. A good 12 hours, I would say. A little over 13.
Yeah.
12 to 13 hours. Because we had to be there. Well, you didn't have to be there. You chose to be there, which is helpful. Had to be there at 11 to help get things set up for sound. We were the first ones for sound to be there. But that, like that kind of thing happens. Because normally it happens to me where I'll want to get there at a certain time, and then certain time comes and I'm not there. Sometimes I may not even left yet. So this time wasn't me, but we set everything up, and surprisingly, no real audio issues throughout the day.
No, everything went pretty well. We got everything figured out. Well, Pat got most everything figured out, and that was it. It didn't really take too much after that. So,
it was all kind of us fitting in with whatever. I do want to pass along a message right here on the air that Pat, Ronald Two Legs, did also send a thank you to you. There's like a group chat that was started with me, him, and Stacy that we started like last week about getting stuff together, and Pat wanted to extend a thank you to you as well.
Cool.
So that
was my pleasure. It was a fun time. I liked hanging out with everybody and doing that kind of shit. So it was a good time.
There were 4 live podcasts. Let me see. The Wrestling Cheers one, our live podcast, that'll be sometime next week. Actually, no, that'll be the regular episode for next week. And then episode 299, which is me sitting down at the impromptu after party at the Corner Bar. I don't know if we should say their names because they do kind of get buried earlier here in this episode, as well as the actual interview. But I had sat down with Bulking Season, and they actually gave a live taste test of what they thought of their burger. Unfortunately, I didn't get mine till like an hour and a half later.
Yeah, the world's best burger was put to the test by a lot of the AIW wrestlers and some of the fans. And I think the overall consensus was it was mediocre at best. So
yeah, it was an okay burger. I didn't necessarily hate it. I got a double cheeseburger with only ketchup and mustard. I probably should have got everything on it except pickles and onions, because those are 2 condiments I'm not a huge fan of. But I like lettuce and I like tomato. Like if I'm making a burger at a cookout, Like if tomato is available, I definitely put it on. If lettuce is available, it just depends on my mood. But like tomato is a like definite. So I just went the easy route in the sense I got mine late. Long story short, I think they forgot to make it because they didn't start making it until after I said something, and they went through all the bills to see like what was missed. I'm
just saying that like the owner should have to face Josh Bishop in a one-on-one match and for falsely promoting that burger. And we should just be able to watch Josh Bishop kick his ass. So that's all I'm saying.
Hopefully the owner's not a woman.
I mean, you know, Bishop can powerbomb a woman too. It'll be fine.
To be fair, if it is a woman owner, they have to go up against Ziggy.
See, she wasn't there to experience this, so I don't know. Maybe Ziggy.
But Derek was there, and Derek will relay the message. But like with me, like I had the burger like really fresh, like a little too fresh, just like where it's just like there's still like a lot of the hot grease still in there. So
I don't think I've ever heard too fresh in my life for a burger. I don't think that's a thing, Justin. I think you're crazy.
Well, like I said, when it's like still a little too hot, like a lot of food you're supposed to let sit for a little while before you eat it.
The hotter the better, man. I got my wings. They were nice and hot, fresh out the fryer into the barbecue sauce, and they were really good. The wings were pretty decent.
I wish I would have
for $11.50, and the mozzarella sticks were okay.
I did try some wings because Amanda got garlic parm wings. Like they were okay. Didn't hate them. Didn't necessarily love them. I wish I would have tried, or at least had one of the barbecue wings, just so I knew like where they lie on like what barbecue sauce they use. Because like I'm not a fan of every barbecue sauce out there. That's why I think like the conversation we had that I always go with the mild, as in like, yeah, this is how I'm going to test their wings and how bad they could potentially be. Because if you like fuck up mild, then I don't want to try anything else you have. Like mild is kind of I feel like every mild wing tastes the same, like sauce wise. Now, obviously, depending on how it's cooked and every other thing, like there's and like the chicken, it's going to have some differences, and that's going to be where I can judge them compared to other places. So there was that part of it. I have yet to look at the audio files for the live interview with Bulking Season at that after party because there was music going. But my experience with those situations is if you're close enough to the microphone and I have the settings low enough to where the music will be like, it'll pick up in the background, but it won't be as strong as someone talking directly in the mic. So you will be able to hear it. Artie and Chuck were blown away with that fact, but from my experience, I mean, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, it was extremely loud in there.
But like I said, our episode, the live podcast will be out next week. Pod Van Dam's will be out this week. That will be the episode of the week. Last I knew about At Odds is theirs is going to be out before this week's episode, so it should come out before this one, I'm guessing.
And I'm on that one, actually, interestingly enough.
You are on that one.
As a live voicemail call, except I was in person, so whatever you want to call that. We're a little run-in.
And I think the AIW podcast is going to be this week's episode too. I have sent the files off to At Odds and AIW for that. And obviously Pod Van Dam and Wrestling Cheers will be in-house with me. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So you'll get
good luck with the Pod Van Dam one, because that was a very ridiculous episode that had, I don't know, like 10 people on it.
Oh, I was only told I have to make sure one thing kind of gets edited out. Just I someone's name can't be mentioned on the show. I'm not going to say who, because that would incriminate what someone would be looking for. But yeah, there's going to be someone's name bleeped from the episode, like if it happens to pop up. And I think it does. So I have to make sure all the references are out of it. But other than that, like there's nothing getting edited. Like normally too, with my editing, I take out a lot of silence, but with how conversations go in like live settings, there's like no need for it. Like you kind of, the pauses, especially with the crowd, people are yelling stuff, and it'll pick up a little bit on the microphone. So you don't want to like take out too much background noise. I know everybody tuned in to hear podcast Tech Talk, but that is the live podcast for the day. If you weren't there, you will still be able to hear everything. There were some exhibition pre-show matches. I have no record of those because more or less in between, I wanted to be out there for every podcast, obviously, because I was on one, was my show. But just in case something happened with the sound system or the mixer, or even I did a backup recording of everything, because if you know anything about me when it comes to podcasting, I'm always afraid something's going to fuck up, especially with recording. And if one thing fucked up, then like, granted, like people would get the crowd would still be able to enjoy it, but anybody who was expecting to put these episodes out, or whatever episode it would affect, would be fucked. So happily, kind of like we were saying, like there were no real audio issues, as well as everything recorded properly on the Rodecaster, which was the main recording, and then had my H6 plugged in to the back of the Rodecaster just for the backup recording, and all that worked out fine. So great success in the audio department for the show. And kind of getting into the show, like for the most part, like we chilled out there by Pat for the whole show, and that was a fun experience. Having wrestlers come in and out of there, hearing certain things on like the walkie-talkies, nothing like bad, but just that communication, like simple communication through the headsets, which, like I said, were the walkie-talkies. And then it was a party atmosphere, not to the level of Rager, but like, hey, we're all out there, we're having fun. We know this is the first time doing this show to this level. And yeah. And we also had, I talked about on the preview episode about all the vendors that were there. It doesn't sound like a lot of the vendors got business, which is sad.
I mean, you can only have so many wrestling toy vendors there and expect to get business. I think this was definitely not as big as last year's, but it still was a lot of fun. There's a couple things that I didn't really like. The fact that there was one food vendor was bullshit.
Yeah.
But then it kind of made sense once you figure out that, it was ran by somebody that was part of the Great Lakes thing. And obviously, if you don't have any competition, you're going to get all the fucking money from that. So,
but
the fix was in on that. But
I think a side effect of that is like, okay, you have one food vendor, great. Yeah, they're getting all the money. But I remember at times seeing a line to get said food, instead of having options where it's like, oh, well, this person has this that I'm looking for, so I'm going to go over there and get this.
Right.
And like being able to split that line up. Like there was one food vendor, and then technically not food per se, but we had the Italian ice there again this year. So I was happy about that, at least. It's like, okay, cool.
They were there for like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and they were gone. They didn't even stick around for most of the show. By intermission, they were gone.
I did not realize that. So
yeah, and then they were bitching that like they were still announcing them at intermission, but they were already gone. Like they'd been gone for a while, so they weren't even there the whole time. And then like they had the beer tent and they had their food area. That was it. So it was like super duper limited on everything. Luckily, I brought my own like drinks and shit. So
I'm doing that next year. I'm definitely doing that fucking next year.
I wasn't a victim of the heat this year. However, little Caden was. We'll get into that a little bit later.
We will get into that. But yeah, I'm gonna learn from this year of, and it wasn't necessarily like being a victim of the heat or anything. It's just getting a cooler, putting your own drinks in there, and then being able to just drink off of there instead of, I bought only one Italian ice for myself, and then I think I bought like between me and Amanda like 5 cans of Dr. Pepper, and there was $2 each, so $10.
Yeah.
I could have bought a fucking 12-pack.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't. I bought about other shit. It's just the options they had, Dr. Pepper's, I was like, yeah, I'll go with that. But nonetheless, I did like this year, even though I didn't really partake in it. It was the Video Game Center. I think that was a hit because you had, I believe it was No Mercy on 1, the latest WWE 2K game, and what popped me, they had a Super Nintendo set up with WWF Raw. because I love that system. And that was my favorite wrestling game on that system that I owned. And actually seeing people play that, like I have a picture of like all 3 games being played. And that's like,
I think as soon as you got there, Big Dan was over there playing N64. So
yeah,
that's when I first noticed it. And then like Broner was there watching Marino and some people play. So that's a good time.
Yeah, it was great. I think you said earlier that like last year's was better. Like I think this year, like for all that stuff, was better. The only thing better.
I'm not saying better. I'm just saying that it was busier. Like they had more people. Like I felt like there was a lot. It was packed compared to this year. Whereas this year it was still decent, but it was not as heavily like there wasn't as much foot traffic as there could have been.
Or at least for pre-show, I felt like once the actual show hit, a lot more people were there because I went down there for intermission and it seemed, fairly busy. But I think it's getting people there when gates opened at 2. And at least this year there was more of a show of having the live podcast and everything. But at the same time, I don't know how many people were there that listened to one or all of the shows. That includes the IW podcast because it's just I don't know the exact metrics of like obviously everybody else's numbers other than mine, but just I know like some people just don't have time for podcasts, so they might not necessarily know of any of these shows.
All right.
So it's like, oh well, these podcasts are gonna be there early. Well, I don't care. So I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna make sure I'm there at 5 because I mean there were people like showing up all throughout the day. And I think too, like they said, like gates were opening at 2. I think they opened before that. Like I think people were showing up about 1:30, which I think that was the way to go. Don't have like, okay, gates open at 2 and then the first podcast starts at 2. Which for me, I was like, how the fuck am I gonna do that? Like, okay, now that as you're coming in, let me try to get you to like sit down and enjoy this show. Like there needs to be some sort of buffer of people walking in to the start of the show. I mean, luckily there was, they did bring in people before 2 on top of they had the first match actually started around 2. So that gave me a little bit more of a buffer. And I think that was supposed to be a 10-minute match and it turned into like a almost 20, maybe. Can't remember. I just know they quote went over their time, or no, it's supposed to be a 5-minute match and it went like 10, 15, which for me, it cut into my recording time. And I'll say this about the live show. Like, we were kind of like on a somewhat strict time schedule. And I was afraid with how the show was going to go, like me asking the question, people answering them and all that kind of stuff. Like we might fucking go over our allotted time. We definitely supposed to be out before 3. And I look at my watch, as the podcast was over and it was like 20 till. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. Like, good. We didn't take as much time as I thought we were, and I was afraid we were going to get way too close to that.
No, I was keeping an eye, man. Like I had my eye on everything as we were kind of doing it, like a bunch of us did, like kind of just watching. I do want to say that, like, for people that care about the pre-show shit, Riley Rose and Mikey Montgomery had a match over a bottle of sunscreen. I believe Riley Rose won that, and I got to ring the bell on that match, so I'm pretty happy with myself. I did a good job ringing the bell. The first match of the show, though...
Hold on. There was also live commentary over the sound system, which AIW hasn't done since I've started coming to AIW. I think they started doing the Smart Mark video commentary like within a year. Because I've seen videos from 2011 that did have loudspeaker commentary. But anyway, what was that? Dom and Derek?
No, it was Derek and...
I knew Derek. Derek's the one I remember. I thought Dom was another one, but no, I think Dom showed up a little bit after that.
Yeah, Dom wasn't there until right before the show started. It was it was Derek and... I remember Brian Carson was doing some... Broner was sitting there with him watching. Might have been Philly. I don't know. I can't remember. There's a photo of it. Somebody took a photo of it. It's floating around on the internets.
Yeah, because I know there's the Tom Dunn.
Yeah, he was sitting there. Yeah, he was sitting there with them too.
Oh, and of course, like the picture, whoever's sitting next to fucking Derek is cropped.
Oh no.
I thought it was Dom. But then I think I remember Dom showing up a little bit later.
Yeah, Dom got in late because he was down in Tennessee. So, oh, you know who it was? It was
Never heard of them.
Hold on, it was Malcolm Cambridge for members only.
Was it Malcolm? Okay.
Mm-hmm. He was there. Yep. I think Arthur was there as well. Oh, and Alberti. Alberti did. I think he was doing commentary.
That's the one I'm thinking of because I was like, it wasn't Malcolm. It's fucking Alberti. Yes.
Yeah. And Weird Body won a match. So, I mean, it was, they had a couple, but, some dark matches.
I know I ducked out for the Weird Body match and it had nothing to do with it being Weird Body. It was just like...
Well, you were just trying to get ready because you were literally on right after them. So...
No, I was on after Mikey and Riley. Because that was the first one. After Wrestling Cheers was the, like, student showcase drills type thing. And then I thought Weird Body was later. But I thought Weird Body went on.
Weird Body he might have been after you. Wasn't PVD talking to him? So the guy that lost?
Unless that was after the student thing. Because I vividly remember, Dom had got here by that point, and Dom was like standing in the ring, and like they did this.
He got there during the student thing because that's like he got there right before it because Derek was going to lead it. Yeah,
it was Dom and Derek like with the students around the ring, and at that point, that's when I was like, I need to get like out of this sun type thing. So I know I wasn't around for the Weird Body match, which was like after all that, because that's, like I said, that's when I was also, okay, this is in between podcasts. I'm going to go like cool off, grab a drink. I think that's when I like went and grabbed, you know what? I think you are right. It was after me, but not directly. It was after the student thing. Now, what were you going to say about like the other first match?
There was just a couple of matches. That was all I was saying.
Well, we've talked enough about a lot of the pre-show stuff. Let's get into the actual tournament. First half was all tournament minus the what we have right before intermission, and then when we come back
championship celebration.
Yes, well, we'll get to that. And then there were 3 other matches after intermission that were non-tournament, and then the final. So let's get into the tournament. Things started off with Levi Everett versus Madman Pondo. And I will admit earlier on here, I was kind of taking the lazy approach of like doing the live tweets. So I was like not really moving from my chair, just like, all right, far away from the ring, just taking a picture, need it for my notes. But come to realize at the beginning of this show, this was on IWTV.
Jay Gold kept saying, I'll be able to watch it at 5. And it didn't dawn on me for like a good 2 hours that he kept saying that. And I'm like, wait a second. This wasn't supposed to be on IWTV, but they figured out a way to get it on there. So,
yeah, I looked back at tweets and I think it was announced by the time we were there. Like we were doing all the podcast stuff when that was announced. So like we weren't necessarily on Twitter looking at that kind of stuff. But then it was one of those things like something's right in front of you where you're not drawing the lines of like, oh yeah, the roaming cameraman had like Wi-Fi antennas, which I've noticed has been something they've been doing with live streams. Like I think if it's not a live stream, they can, edit everything together later, but you need like those antennas, whatever the exact word form is, if I'm not using the right one, but you need that to like get it for a live mix. And that's when I was like, oh, son of a bitch. It was right there in front of me the whole time. Because I noticed there was like coffee filters on it. But anyway, what a match to start off with. Levi Everett coming back to Ashtabula. Still hoping for the day that, maybe he's booked on next year's card and we work out a deal where he gets to come out on a horse and buggy.
Yeah, I mean, there was horses there earlier in the day kind of doing their thing. So would have been cool for him to come out on one. But
and good Lord, could you smell it?
I really didn't notice it except for like maybe once or twice throughout the day. I was more worried about the wasps under the stairs.
I was worried about the wasps, but every so once in a while I would just get this whiff of horse shit. But it was definitely like while everything was going on, and then everything that was going on with horses there. Once that died down and all the horses left, like didn't really necessarily smell anything. But like I said, it's great to see Levi back again, especially at this show and going up against Madman Pondo, a guy we haven't seen in a while at AIW.
That's my first time seeing him actually live, so.
Which is, I mean, it's halfway crazy. You've been around for a while, but it's not like he popped up all the time. And the times that he was popping up, you weren't going to every show.
No, it was very few shows. Like maybe once or twice a year was I going to a show when he was more consistently there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like now that I go to almost every show I can, this was the first time I got to see him live, and he got some money stapled to his face and just left it there while he was wrestling and finishing the match. There were some light tubes that were used. That was pretty wild. He even used Levi's churner. It made it look like he was jerking off Levi, which in retrospect, I'm really sad we didn't get jerk him off chant or something going. So
that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, or churn his butter or something like that, you know, something funny.
Let's remember that for next time.
Yeah, put that one in the old notebook for next time.
Yeah, I want to say the last time we seen Madman Pondo at AIW in a match, because there were times after this that he showed up AIW for, you know, just kind of hang out. But I want to say it was the last Battle of the Sexes show. I think the one that was after Absolution 10 was, I think that was Battle of the Sexes 2. I can't remember. I know there was another Battle of Sexes, and I just can't remember if it fell before or after this one. That one might have been the first one, but I'm not looking it up right now. But still, like, no matter what, like that, it had been like 2015 since we last seen Pondo in AIW. And Pondo halfway reminds me of Tracy Smothers. Like the only thing, like, he doesn't do the dancing bit and everything, but it's just like he's an old school Southern heel, but there's still like portions of the crowd that like him for whatever reason it may be for them. You know, a lot of juggalos obviously like him, and that's fine, but he will try to make you hate him still. I don't know, like he kind of, like I said, he kind of reminds me of a newer Tracy.
I think it's just the old school influence that's kind of making you remember Tracy.
And they are from the same area, or at least they used to live in the same area. I don't know exactly where they're both individually from, but what they called home base was the same area.
Right.
Any thoughts on, you know, Levi versus Pondo that we haven't touched on?
Poor Levi got busted open pretty good. That's about it, man. It felt really long for the match that they did. Like there was some really cool stuff in it, but it felt super long for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's just I was just tired at that point. I don't know. Like the show itself, like got me back into it once we started going, but I don't know if I was just really tired or what. It just felt really long.
Because it was the second longest match on the card.
Okay, that makes sense, I guess.
Not even the main event was as long as Pondo versus. I think I know why. I think this match accidentally went a little long.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't think they were supposed to go that long. So yeah, I pulled up Cage Match. So yeah, it told me like this match went long. The next match went long. Actually everything in the first half minus 2 matches went over 10 minutes. And then in the second half, only the main event went past 10 minutes, which if they all would have like cut down a little, the main event could have been as long as it went, especially when it was a 4-way elimination. But yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, it did feel, like I said, or like you said, kind of long. Yeah.
Throughout the night too, like we had, where we were sitting in the audio tent, we had guests drop by, and it was a lot of fun to hear some of them, cheer things and get into the show and enjoy themselves. So it was a good time.
Hearing some of the shit Thorne would yell would be fucking hilarious. Like
I didn't want to say his name, but yeah, it was Thorne coming over and hanging out and fucking talking shit and watching and getting into it. And it was really fun to watch him, watch wrestling. Yeah. Everybody likes to watch Twan. Watching John get into stuff is really funny too.
Yeah. Cause I don't think it's necessarily incriminating. It's not like he's out there just like talking mad shit, but he would say stuff that you would think that, oh, like if you had no idea who he was, you think it's just a fan. So it would be kind of funny. So yeah, like he was one of the funny ones too. sit and listen to, or just, I remember him just kind of like walking by as like a wrestler was coming out. I don't remember what he said, but it was definitely like a really fun like heckle.
I remember when we get to it later, I'll mention it. When Josh Bishop was having his match, there was a fun one.
You know, it was Madman Pondo pinning Levi Everett to advance to the finals.
Hardcore legend going into the finals of the hardcore tournament.
Let's move on to the next one. Derek Dillinger versus Wes Barkley, 1 year to the day after the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tournament Finals, where Wes Barkley came out on top. Derek gets his chance at redemption. And we had a special guest at the audio tent for this one, a very special guest.
Yes.
Ziggy's dog.
Yes. Ziggy's dog, Rupert, was there. TSJ, the professional dog walker, had loaned his services out and was taking care of Rupert while Ziggy was doing her thing in the ring. And he got to watch his mom perform, which was adorable, watching Rupert see her and just go crazy. He was checking everybody out. It was a good time.
Rupert really wanted to do a run-in.
He did. He very much did.
As soon as like he seen Ziggy out there, like he's like, I want to go. So good thing like she didn't get like attacked in front of us or something, because I could only imagine.
Yeah.
But I liked where we went for this match too, because we kind of got two birds with one stone here. First off, kind of jumping over everything, but it kind of needs to be mentioned that Derek does win, but he did get a little help from the Duke, just kind of distracting Wes, and it helped Derek get more of an advantage. Like it wasn't a direct cause of the pinfall, but it helped. So you got Derek getting his revenge from last year. And then you have, after the match, you got Wes throws down a challenge for Wrestle Rager, him versus the Duke in a Texas Bull Rope match. He called it Mr. Absolution versus Mr. Wrestle Rager, as Wes Barkley is calling himself Mr. Wrestle Rager. And you know what? I kind of agree.
All right.
Do you not agree?
No, I mean, that's fine if he wants to call himself that. That's fine. I don't specifically have anybody specific in mind. I would say is Mr. Wrestle Rager, but if he wants to coin himself that, it's up for grabs.
We've had 3 Wrestle Ragers since it coming back, so it's basically not counting the first one, correct?
Since we've been back?
Since Wrestle Rager has been back.
Oh.
Because Wrestle Rager was originally a one-off 3-day show. Yes, 3 days of AIW.
I know 4 was the first one I went to, and then 5 was at that weird place in Parma. That's all I know.
Or maybe we've had 4. We've had 4 since, but I think Wes has been to 3, I want to say. But I can vividly remember his matches, and like I think one of the reasons why he's calling himself Mr. Wrestle Rager is because his fans, the Barkley Nation, like took over those first 2 times because they were against, if I'm correct, Eddie Kingston and Filthy Tom Lawler. So these,
I think in 4 he definitely.
I think that was Lawler. 4 was Lawler.
I think it was a tag match because I believe Gage was in that match as well. Because I remember Gage and Lawler going after Barkley Nation post match.
Okay. I'm just remembering Filthy Tom being in the ring when the beer was thrown that I caught, and it was because of the Barkley Nation.
Right.
But you saying tag team match does kind of ring a bell as I'm pulling. Yes, you are right. But nonetheless, it was the Barkley Nation, those people that we know that are the, Barkley fans. Because I'm granted, they were Rip City Shooter fans, 100%. But it's the people that we know, like some of Wes's family was involved in it. So him calling himself Mr. Wrestle Rager, I'm kind of buying it. And then we go into like last year too of the main event match. So yeah, if we were going to call anybody Mr. Wrestle Rager, it would be him. I think there's one other person that could have been called that, but they have since been canceled and we don't see it shows anymore. So now it's Wes Barkley. And if you technically want to get down to it, how many people call themselves Mr. Absolution too? fucking Duke, Donst, Gargano. I think those are the main three. Anyway,
I don't know, man. I kind of feel like Tom Waller might have a better claim to being Mr. Wrestle Rager, considering he's won the main event of the last two, whereas Wes Barkley was on the losing end of the last two. I don't know. It's just me, though. But like I said, I really don't care if he wants to call himself that. We're really getting in the weeds here for a whole lot of nothing. So, but that match being set up is awesome. So. That'll be the continuation of the Duke and Wes Barkley feud, which has been interesting so far. Yep. Something I wanted to bring up too. Okay. I don't know if you noticed. I didn't notice it at the Absolution show, but it was mentioned that like in Duke's throne there was the Infinity Gems. Did you notice that?
I did not notice it, but I first heard about it on At Odds, and then hearing which people potentially have heard by now, it does get mentioned on the card is going to change that was Pedro's doing. Because, well, obviously you know this, but everybody else might not. It was Pedro's doing because it was San Diego Comic-Con weekend, and normally the Duke goes, and I think this was potentially his first year in a long time not going. So it was like a nod to that, but no, I did not notice that. To me, like I was more overwhelmed of, it was a combination of WrestleMania 9, especially with the painting, like the walls and everything.
Right.
But also kind of Macho King. So like I was really excited about like that aspect of it.
Right.
So I overlooked that. But yeah. Any other thoughts on that match?
No.
Well, I already mentioned it, but I'll just say it again that Derek got the pin for the win and advances to the finals of the tournament. Let's move on to the next one. Ultramanus Black versus Nightmare Freddy. A lot happened in this match, whether it be the match itself, stuff not in the match that kind of ended up becoming in the match, kind of like what we alluded to earlier. A lot of crazy shit, but this was a match I was looking forward to because, Ultramanus Black isn't necessarily like a death match or hardcore wrestler. Same thing with Nightmare Freddy. I felt like we would see something different, a lot more just brawling with this match, which perfectly fine. Which there was a lot of brawling in the West Derek match, if I'm correct.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of old school hardcore thrown in here too. So like, if anybody is going to see like one match from this show, I think it's this match that you need to watch. This match is like just the most bizarre, out of left field, entertaining thing that you can possibly see on a wrestling show.
And can we say like just shout out to Doug Gilbert for being his age, wrestling, and not only that mask, but that long sleeve sweatshirt in the middle of the summer in the sun, 2 matches too. Like, hats off to that dude.
Yeah, that's super impressive. Like everybody that went out there and wrestled 2 matches in that heat, it wasn't even super hot, but just being in the sun and stuff like that, it was took its toll. Like I do not envy them. And
like I said, with Nightmare Freddy, you got to add on that mask and that sweatshirt. So like you're just adding to. Oh,
the neck flaps were open for that.
I think they just happened to like pop open. I don't think he reached in there and was like, fuck this, like popping them out. Because I think both times he came out, neck flaps are in. Just after some movement and a little bit in the match. Yeah, neck flaps were out. But we talked about something earlier, kind of hinting at it. Charly was not the victim of the sun this year.
No, it was not. I came prepared.
This year, it was good old friend Caden. And we watched him like fairly early in this match, like maybe within like a couple minutes, like he runs over to this particular trash can and throws up. Literally maybe, because this match didn't go very long.
I think it was before the match. It was like towards the end of the last one that he got sick.
I thought it was at the beginning of this one. But anyway, like early at the beginning. Nonetheless, halfway through this match, freaking Nightmare Freddy and Ultramanus Black are brawling. And Nightmare Freddy throws Ultramanus Black into the same trash can that Caden just threw up in. Like, I don't think anybody else threw anything in there in between. It goes right into it. And you just see, or for all of us that were in this tent, like we were all just kind of like, ugh, because we knew what was in there. And just, you then hear Caden. I don't know if it comes up on the broadcast, but you hear him go like, I'm sorry, Ultraman is black.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, very fun match. I love to see Ultraman come back to AIW again. It's been, God, that's another guy we haven't seen in maybe a little over a decade. Not a little over, but a little under a decade, I mean. It's been like 2012, maybe 2013. Any other thoughts on the match?
No, other than the finish to the match was gruesome. There's a photo floating around out on the Twitter of it, and it was wild to see live. Like once you saw what happened, and then like to see the aftermath was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was Nightmare Freddy, which is great. Nightmare Freddy getting the win with a sleeper, but there was a nice what do you want to call that? The knives
claw slash, man.
Claw slash.
Claw slash.
Yeah, claw slash right across Ultraman's black stomach.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Last of our first round matches, Kaplan versus Hoodfoot, a rematch from the Winchester. And if I'm correct, is this Hoodfoot's first match back?
I have no idea. I thought he wrestled since his arm got messed up, but he was definitely the most covered person, I'd say almost, of the tournament. And he didn't do anything super crazy, so he was being relatively safe with everything. So, but still had to face Kaplan. So, yeah,
I don't got many thoughts on this one, but it was Kaplan pinning Hoodfoot for the win.
Also, side note, the last time that Ultramantis Black was in AIW was in 2014.
J-Lit
weekend, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking when he was champion, and then I knew there was another time, and as soon as you said it, I know he was in a match with, I want to say, Veda and Fontaine.
He had on night one, he had a no DQ match with the late Danny Havoc, and then on night two, he teamed with Colin Delaney, Marion Fontaine, and Veda Scott to defeat Gregory Iron and the Iron Curtain.
Okay. Colin was the only one I didn't remember, but there's a picture in my head of Veda and Ultramantis Black in the ring. Can't remember before or after the match, but like just them being there.
Somewhere Orange Flaccidity is yelling that Colin is the only one you should remember from that match. So
very true.
But yeah, not much else to say about Cap Daddy and the man known as Hoodfoot. It's good to see Hoodfoot back. I personally don't think he should be. I just never thought he should do hardcore. Like he was always just a big dude that could get away with just like straight wrestling. But he wanted to do hardcore. So unfortunately for him, he got matched up against Kaplan in the first round, and Kaplan didn't come to lose. So
all right, let's move on to the last match of the first half. Well, we didn't know it was a match at first, but out came bulking season for a championship celebration as the new AIW Tag Team Champions. Then we end up getting the Bitcoin Boys with the Duke out to interrupt. And, there's a good back and forth type stuff. Easier to go back and watch it on IWTV. But it ends up leading to the Bitcoin Boys and the Duke attacking bulking season. But out comes Bushwhacker Luke to help. This then turns into a 6-man tag match that was approved by John Thorne and Matt Wadsworth, both giving a thumbs up. A big shout out to the Duke for giving me a dodgeball reference because he said, "Fuck you, Chuck Norris." I think someone around us was like, "I don't get it." I'm like, "Dodgeball."
Right.
But yeah, kind of what you expect here. There was a little bit of comedy. Bushwhacker Luke eating ass. Just regular stuff you'd expect.
Mikey showing ass.
Yeah. Before the match, we did have a reference to Mikey's hog.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of my favorite parts was right after Bushwhacker Luke bit Mikey's ass, or pulled down his pants and bit Mikey's ass, Duke turns around and starts yelling, "Where's Chris Hansen?" Which, are you saying Mikey is underage? That's what I got from it.
I may have said, I may have screamed that he should turn around and bite the other side now.
Jesus.
I mean, you know, that's a lasting memory if one of the bushwhackers bites your hog. Just saying.
Oh yeah? Well, I know the bushwhackers licked your head when you were young, but you know what Bushwhacker Luke did to me? I don't remember the exact ending. I think I was halfway distracted, but it was bulking season, Bushwhacker Luke getting the win. Something that you'll hear on Nick.
And Bushwhacker Luke took a group of kids, including Caden, to do the bushwhacker dance around the ring.
One thing you're going to hear in next week's episode, and it's kind of mentioned. I want to find a picture from 2019 of this, but like think about this. Beginning of this match, before Bushwhacker Luke comes out, you have bulking season and Bitcoin Boys in the ring. This was the student debut match of 2019. So all four in the ring at Goldhorn Brewery, I think it was.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Couldn't exactly remember the name, but Goldhorn was the one sticking out. I wasn't sure if I was right. But nonetheless, they all debuted in that match. They were all singles competitors. They were all, you know, babies in the industry. They hadn't necessarily had their character filled out or, you know, developed to, especially to the extent they are today. And here we are, arguably two of the best tag teams in AIW.
Mm-hmm.
Bulking season, definitely they are the champions. But, you know, if you were to say who's number two, you could make, you know, a reason for a lot of these tag teams. And I think one of them is the Bitcoin Boys. And if there's anybody that's going to beat or has a really good potential of beating bulking season, it is Bitcoin Boys. And there is that story for me written there where all four of these men, you know, debuted together, and here they are in this whatever championship match would be.
Chuck Fox, Arthur Sox.
All right. After this, we went to intermission and we came back with a fucking banger. Tim Donst versus Dan Champion versus Dominic Guarini versus Philly Collins versus Big Twan Tucker versus Isaiah Broner.
Whew. And the previous day, Philly had called out Isaiah Broner, and he then ran continuously throughout this match away from Isaiah Broner. So
like, hopefully we do see Broner versus Philly in J-Lit.
Hopefully.
Opening round match, semifinals match, or finals. Give us one of them. Because if it were like the finals, because if I'm correct, obviously first round, 1-on-1, 1 fall. Second round, 4-way, 1 fall. But the last round's a triple threat elimination. So if you manage to get those two in the finals, you can't avoid Broner. You have to go up against him one way or another, unless the other person in that match beats Broner for you. And looking at his track history, I don't think that's going to be likely. But we'll see where that goes. This match did not last very long.
Everybody got dusty. Everybody got dirty.
It is literally the second shortest match on the card by only 3 seconds. But yeah, this was, I felt like this was a halfway Isaiah Broner showcase match. Here, he goes up against Tim Donst, a guy who at one point was kind of a standard in AIW. Dominic Guarini, obviously, like we know his pedigree and what he means to the company. Philly, everything that happened with Go for Broke, he was one of the ones that had a fairly good showing. He did get a, championship match last year for the title. And obviously, decorated tag team champion. Big Dan. He's Big Dan. I do love Big Dan. I hope he's another guy we see more of in AIW. And he was fun to have around as a whole. But then also Big Twan, who's kind of, trying to make a name for himself again in AIW. And then fucking Broner. Like a Hoss scramble. Like, I don't know. I don't think it was announced as that. No, it's not on Cage Match as that, but it's kind of what it was.
I mean, I'll be real surprised if we don't see Broner Bishop by the end of the year. So,
yeah, I got something I want to see. It has nothing to do with Broner. What if Tim Donst challenged for the Haas boot and he wins, and because Donst's boots are so old, he starts wearing it in his match because there's no duct tape on it? I think it'd be great.
That's ridiculous.
But you got to admit, that's great.
Sure, I'll admit it this one time that it's great.
Picture Donst winning and like putting on the boot now. He has one fucking boot with duct tape and the other one is the Haas boot. Yeah, I got nothing else to say about this except for, fucking Broner kick fucking ass.
Hit that lariat and got the 3.
And as his hand's getting raised, the picture that I have, he's staring at Philly, who's just standing outside of the ring looking at him. Let's move on to the next one. Casey Carrington versus Riley Rose, and this was the shortest match of the evening. I had nothing much to say here except for they did kind of play on this thing that Riley Rose got injured 1 year ago at this show. I don't think he got hurt per se at this show. It seemed like it, but might have been a part of the show.
Right.
But I kind of liked that for Riley, a little bit of sympathy. I mean, do you got anything else to say on this match?
Not really, no.
Sorry, guys. It was Casey Carrington picking up the win over Riley Rose via referee stoppage. Let's move on to the next one. Marino Tenaglia versus Joshua Bishop for the AIW Absolute and Intense Championships. I do like what I've been seeing out of PME, them being on live podcast, the work that they did here on the show. I think Marino is a tough competitor, and I do like how he can come off as a dick. Any thoughts on this match?
This was like a nice little showcase of Bishop actually doing some just regular wrestling, and he looked impressive. But the big thing for this match is what happened post match, not even the match itself.
Yeah, well, that's what we get to. I'll just make sure everything we got in the match right now before we move on to kind of.
So Bishop hit a powerbomb and then he hit like a running sliding elbow to finish, and I don't know if you even really need that elbow. I think the powerbomb's pretty much enough, but I'm curious if that's going to start being a more common thing with him to throw that in.
Could be. This could have been like just a show to test it out.
True.
We'll find out at Rager. But Joshua Bishop pinned Marino Tenaglia to retain the AIW Absolute and Intense Championships. But Joshua Bishop, after the match, announced that he is dropping the Intense Championship and it will be up for grabs at JLIT 2022. So this is a little interesting. It's kind of changes where we thought things would go.
I was told as that happened, I was told, now stop bitching. So I will never bitch about it again.
Yeah, rightfully so. So now Vacant is holding 2 titles in AIW. Well, no, technically Shane is still the one. But yeah, the Intense titles, Vacant, up for grabs at JLIT. Curious to see where we'll go there. I think I know where we're going, but I think the finals could be very interesting. You put the right 3 people in the finals to where I'm like, I'm sitting at my seat going, I don't know who the fuck's going to win. And I can think of a few people that could be in that match and it would fit perfectly. But we won't get into that right now. Thoughts on Bishop dropping the Intense Championship besides stop bitching about it?
It's we've talked about it and like gone over it ad nauseum for the last year or more, and we're finally at that point where it's finally happened. Obviously the most sense makes put it in the JLIT. If you've been paying attention to certain storylines, I think they're going to play out pretty interestingly going into JLIT, which is going to make it can't miss. I'm still contemplating how I'm going to to work my J-Lit weekend out, if I'm going to just come for night 2 or if I'm going to be there for both nights. I don't know yet. I haven't decided yet.
Do it.
I don't know, man. It's kind of it's hard to do the Friday shows without calling off and being able to just like sleep for a chunk of the day. Getting up at 4:30 and then trying to go to wrestling. Get pretty tired on the way home, and it's pretty sketchy. So
sell feet pictures for money.
I mean, I'm really thinking I'm just going to do night 2. I think that's going to be the more fun night. So,
and you're going to sell feet pictures for money.
I'm not going to have to do that. I can just come to night 2 and be okay. So
if you want Charlie's feet pictures for money, you can DM him at Charly_Butters or at IWTV Guide. Warning, yeah, you might get someone else on that one.
And his toenails are painted, so if you're into that, there you go.
All right, let's move on to the main event. The finals of the inaugural Bill Alfonso Hardcore Tournament. Derek Dillinger versus Madman Pondo versus Kaplan versus Nightmare Freddy. And this was elimination. It wasn't announced, but the way things work in AIW, this actually made sense. Because I think, like I said, I think J-Lit's the same way.
Yeah.
I'm going to just go at it like this. And I think this happened first 2 in the right order. Nightmare Freddy eliminated Madman Pondo and Derek Dillinger eliminated Nightmare Freddy. So right out of the way, we get the 2 people who I'm not expecting to be at Wrestle Rager, like out of the picture. So good. And we're down to easily the 2 of the people that you would figure are going to win. Kaplan and Derek Dillinger. Kaplan 1 year ago, gets ran over by the U-Haul. And Derek Dillinger, like I mentioned 1 year ago, the night before this show, loses to Wes Barkley. And this is where we start the second place argument or story.
So let's be fair here. Kaplan was not run over by the U-Haul. He was just hit by it, which a little bit different. But still crazy thing to see happen live. And then Bishop jumped off the top of the U-Haul onto him through some tables. Bishop is an insane person. I'm glad he bowed out of the tournament because I think this could have been a lot worse in the finals. But Derek and Kaplan did a pretty good job with just brawling and being crazy and doing what they needed to do in this match. And it unfortunately didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I was still happy with the outcome.
We had Kaplan pinning Derek. So once again, Derek is second place. And also we do got to mention that Ziggy helped out Derek to get the final pinfall, but Bill Alfonso would not count it.
Yeah, this kind of harkens back to the feud with Matthew Justice and Derek, which we still have not gotten that third match of. So that kind of came into play, which was kind of interesting. It's instantly where my mind went with it. And I'm like, oh, see, exactly. Fucking Fonzie's going to screw him now because of that feud not being over. And it's like, he kind of made his own bet in that one because, have so many feuds going at once. Shit like that can happen. So
maybe at Rager we'll finally get that tag match.
That or down the road we just get that final one-on-one.
That too.
So yeah, lots of potential there for that feud to heat back up post J-Lit. So see what happens.
So Kaplan now gets a shot at any AIW championship he wants at Wrestle Rager. The funny thing is,
any match he wants.
That's true. Why did I put championship?
I think that was the original discussion, but then it was kind of turned to any match you can dream up of. But
I think it's because, which granted, I corrected people before me, like, he gets any match he wants, but like everybody kept saying, well, why wouldn't you go for a championship match? And it's like, well, that's true.
Well, I mean, now he's the hardcore champion, so
no,
maybe he doesn't need that belt.
True. That's the other point of it, that he basically said that, he's going to defend this title now.
And said all challengers. And we kind of tried to egg Antoine to go challenge him, but he wouldn't. So.
I know what I need to see now. I need to see title for title. Kaplan versus the Duke. To be great. Get Kaplan's revenge from getting screwed out of the boot, and he can be a double champion in AEW now. He can walk around with the boot. But yeah, that was the end of the show. Happy to see Kaplan pick up that win, and still we're waiting on Derek to finally win one. Any final thoughts or last minute plugs before we go?
Check out my other podcast, If You Catch My Grift. We just did an episode on the terrible prison system, discussing the company that basically does the food for prison systems and all kinds of scummy shit that they're into. So that should be out hopefully by the time or shortly after when this comes out. Also, IWTV Guide is on its 6th season, and they're reviewing Paradigm Pro Wrestling Heavy Hitters 2. And I believe that they have a special guest on this week. We know him as Coach, but he's on Twitter as Porter O'Shea. So that'll be interesting. And you can find me on Twitter at Charly_Butters. Do not DM me for feet pics.
Do not listen to him. He's trying to do
reverse psychology.
Reverse psychology. Yes, I was gonna say subliminal advertising, but no, yeah, he's trying to do reverse psychology to get you to break the rules and ask for you to ask for feet pics. So I heard you might get some pretty good feet pics at JGold12 on Twitter.
That I have heard, and I believe that is correct.
But, of course, you can find myself at jsummers330 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, much like you can find this show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose, a desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. Like I said earlier in the show, please rate, review, and subscribe your ever listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Check out our podcast friends such as Pod Van Dam, Super Fantastic Podcast, It's Evolution Baby, The IndieCast, Sobros Network, Biff Radio, GameWorks Podcast, Powerbomb Jitsu, The Spotlight Series, Fully Posable, Positively Pro Wrestling, IWTV Guide, If You Catch My Grift, At Odds with Wrestling, Marks with Mikes, X-Over Podcast, This Ends at Prom, and Porch Talk. Check out our other non-podcasting friends such as The Mystery Men, Redline Radio, Mouse's Wrestling Adventures, VHS Party Tonight on Instagram, Heart of Gold, Toy Toy Show, Time Capsule Toys, Smokin' Jay's Barbecue, and remember you can use promo code CHEERS for a discount on your order. JCP Designs, Midwest Territory, Southern Underground Pro, and the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs. That will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name. And we'll see you later, Pally. Later.
It's the Wrestling Cheers. Get up on your feet, brightening your day in the middle of the week. And you gotta love the show. Yeah, you know it holds a title for the best podcast. Talking wrestling in Ohio. Finishing a cold one, take a load off. We ain't all about the prohibition like Josh, so we cheers. And then we sit back. Other shows are in the trash, kinda like they Nick Stapp. Like the name is Matt Justice, wearing all the gold. Wrestling Cheers is coming to a close. The #1 podcast going in the game. And one day everybody's gonna know the name. It's the Wrestling Cheers. This is Platinum Max, signing off. Ohio, good night. The world, good night. We love you. We'll see you next week.